myself as a songwriter ever until I started writing them. I think before that, you know, when you're a guitar strummer, you think, after a few years of that, you think, oh, well, maybe I'm a guitarist now. And I think it's only after you've written a few songs that you start thinking of yourself as maybe a songwriter. Later on, my folks realized that I was serious about it when I got into my teens, but when I was smaller than that, no. Actually, at the very early stages, you know, rock and roll music was really pretty much frowned upon. I mean, I think years of me crashing away on boogie-woogie piano and stuff and driving them crazy and not learning the violin and not wanting to be a classical musician or anything like that. They must have just I must have just worn them down, poor things. Everything that I've ever done, I've always had the music has always been the most important thing to me, and I'd always really wanted to get going with it. I seem to remember the songs were pushing very hard, and they just kept pushing harder and harder until I had no choice but to get out there and try and get them recorded. But I don't regret that. The fact that I worked so hard in other jobs and worked for so long in other jobs, and in terms of life experience, every now and again you meet musicians who've never done any of that. And I feel kind of sorry for people that have never had that experience. Well, with Steve, I mean, the only thing with Steve was that instead of being more of a folk type picker, I learned more about the country blues, and I listened to a lot of blues records around Steve's house. But as far as, you know, the developing your own style, that just came from a fusion of picking and playing. So there was a sort of synthesis starts between the two. So you just slowly start to add more and more to it. But essentially, it's baby stuff for me, and I like very simple things on the instrument. It's difficult to talk about because it's just something that you listen to and recognize. It's not something that you can define very easily. And everybody's got a different touch on every instrument. So when I was playing in rockabilly and R&B stuff, I didn't want to do any of my stuff with that. I just wanted to play, you know, stuff in that other idiom, because there was it was just a different setup. I was just a guitar player in a little band, and I didn't want it. And I knew that wasn't going to be it for as far as anything that I was writing myself. It wasn't going to be any use at all. In '76, I managed to get a Greyhound ticket to go around America. I got a bus ticket, and I went just with a shoulder bag and just went round, and through the South and everything, just chancing it really. And when I came back, I didn't. A lot of the stuff had solidified in the sense that I just didn't want to have the day job then. I wanted to be pushing full time with music. I knew that was really the only thing that I wanted to do. I would just recorded a few tracks and that was it. Then I used to listen to a program called Honky Tonk on Radio London on Sunday morning. So I suggested to John that we send the tape to Charlie, because he sounded like a good guy to me on the radio, and I liked the records that he played. So the next thing that we knew, when we dropped him off, after we dropped him off with Charlie, was that he started playing the demos on the radio, on Honky Tonk. Rhett Davis was the engineer on the first album. It took a couple of weeks to make, and maybe less. I can't remember now, 12 days or 14, or whatever long it was. And Rhett was telling me not so long ago, he said that, when he came into the studio on the first day, he said to me, he said, this might just be another album to you, but it's not to me. And I said, I never said that, surely. He said, yeah, you did. It was doing really well all over the place, and in Europe. It wasn't really known in the UK, because there was a committee then for Radio 1 that was run by a peroxide female called Doris or Mavis or Gladys or something, and they didn't play Sultans of Swing at all. It had come up before the committee, but they'd said that it had too many words, which is probably right, and they hadn't. They decided not to play. So when it was a hit in America, it got played on. I think Paul Gambaccini had a we playing American hits and it got on the UK radio that way. And then then people in England and Scotland and Northern Ireland played it, started to hear it, and it was a hit then. But it was about a year after it had been a hit in Holland and France and Germany and New Zealand, Australia and everywhere else. The States with clubs, which was great fun. And it was a very exciting time too, because a lot of people want to see you the first time, and to meet Bob Dylan and all the rest of it. I used to go down to Santa Monica from my hotel in Los Angeles to Bob's place, and we'd run down the songs together, the two of us. He did quite a bit of pre-work on that because he wanted it to be more of a professional sound. To quote Bob, he said he'd been making more like home records, and he wanted to make a professional sound record. And we have the same interest in the roots of the music, and both in terms of white and black roots. And I think if you want to have some depth in terms of what you do, if you're looking for that, then you have to really be involved in the roots of the music to a certain extent. So it was natural, traumatic. The fame thing and the thing at the very beginning I found traumatic. Sitting in a hotel in Holland doing 26 interviews, that I found it very wearing. It was like somebody got a thread from my jacket and just kept pulling it, But it's like anything else. Human beings get used to almost anything. But in spite of that, I just felt as though I was very fortunate. I think it's important to want to do it. Every now and again you hear a story of somebody gets signed up and the management says, well, we've got a tour for you now. It's got 39 dates on it, and you hear these stories. People go, 39 days. I didn't get into it to be away from home for 39 days. I mean, we do 250 shows in a year. I think you've got to want to. There are a lot of musicians out there that do more than that. There's thousands and thousands of musicians who make a living by playing every night of the year. And I reckon I've just been one of the luckiest people ever to be able to go out and play to people, to be allowed to go out and play, to have people that want you to come and play for them. But you've got to really want to do it. You've got to have a constitution of a truck. Doing a residency at Wembley, at the other venue there, and I can't remember how, what we were doing. It must have been about 20 nights or something, and so all we had to do was walk across the car park. I mean, we just had to turn up a little bit earlier, and we went across the car park. We literally walked to the gig, and did it, and then went back across the car park, went into the arena, and did the gig that night. Went home. To us, Brothers in Arms were just going to be another record, and it just the reason. There's a couple of reasons why it got as big as it did, and they had to do with the fact that a couple of singles were hits in America, and had to do with the fact that it was just bang on the same time as the CD thing happened. In fact, Brothers in Arms was the very first CD single, I am told, and one of the first CD albums. So that was just complete coincidence. There was a new technology in terms of the video, wasn't there? Because Steve Barron really wanted to use this computer graphic thing. And I don't know how it looks now. I suppose it might look a tad old-fashioned. I really don't know. But I had nothing to do with it, thankfully, which is probably why it turned out okay. And Steve did it. The stuff that I wrote for the beginning, I got the idea that in my head that I'd seen this kid in his bedroom and with his MTV dreams and the camera whooshing across this landscape. It never happened because Steve had, did his own video, which is fine. But MTV had this advert that they used to promote themselves with acts going on saying, "I want my MTV," and to the camera. And I saw one with the police on there doing that, saying, "I want my MTV," and of course, we knew those lads pretty well because we'd done a lot of gigs together in Germany and places like that, and then we used to split the bill and just go around and did quite a lot of stuff together, and I thought of, if I took the tune from "Don't Stand So Close to Me" and did "I Want My MTV," that would be pretty good if Sting could sing that. And I said, that'd be pretty good if I could get Sting to sing that. And somebody said, "Oh, well, he's on holiday here, right?" Because we were in Montserrat. So again, it was just another coincidence, the same as the technology, and the whole thing just came together because he was on holiday there, and we were recording there. So he just came up the studio one night and did it. Me and John, to me, we were a good team, and because I think between us we managed to, you've got to be very determined. I think the willpower is very important. You've got to really want to do it. I mean, when we couldn't get a gig, we'd organise our own gig. The willpower thing is very important, and obviously you've got to be slightly obsessed, as I was with the guitar and all of that, and from a young age, and still, if I see a window with guitars in it, I'll end up going and looking, and I still like to look at my guitars and play them, and I see them as really beautiful things in and of themselves, and you love the instrument and love the music, and you've got to be slightly obsessed. The last thing that we did was Nelson Mandela show at Wembley, where we got together and did a few days practice and did that. So I mean, if there's a reason, I'll definitely do it. Scrapyard of things in books and stuff, and some of the stuff can come to life years afterwards. So it's not always just new stuff, because things can sit around and wait to get a life for a while. It's like a load of body parts. I mean, there's one thing on there called One More Matinee that I started writing when I was a kid on a newspaper. I thought I was going to do an interview. I was sent to interview the cast of a pantomime, Lead City Varieties, and I ended up in the Ugly Sisters dressing room. And I started writing that song when I got back to the office, instead of doing my work as usual. And it never really found a place. It never got done. It never got finished, and slowly, so I'm pretty slow and desperate, really. It's tragic that it should have taken as long as it has, and to have been as ordinary as it was when it was finished. But there you are. I mean, you just have to do what you do. I have no idea what makes things fit at all. What happens? I suppose you become conscious that there may be one or two patterns emerging as you go along.
Throughout his career, Knopfler has shied away from deeply personal songs, content instead to observe the world around him, whether it be a band who are the sultans of swing or one being paid money for nothing.
When we were growing up, in my generation, America colonized our entire consciousness. We were brought up with movies and with music. I mean, the country is endlessly fascinating and wonderful people, but endlessly there's always this pain there too. The same old themes. So it's endlessly absorbing, I think, is really the thing about America. But it's fantastic in a lot of ways, and also it's clear of a lot of the things that still hinder progress over here. It doesn't really have a class system. It doesn't really have a lot of the baggage that's come with the deeper past, the longer past, with the history, of course. It's different. And sometimes refreshingly so, I think. I mean, there's still aching great problems, to to be addressed. But I remember when the first album came out, my mum said, "Well, you were getting a lot off your chest," but and maybe that is just with there's something a bit pent up, and you let it go. Eventually, maybe first albums might be a bit like that. I never spent much time thinking about it, but I think the observer has always attracted me more. Which is probably the thing that I liked about the idea about journalism. Maybe attracted me, that way, or painting. Is that you're just observing something, So some of them are like that, the Money for Nothings or the Sultans of Swings or the, whatever they are, what it is. No, and then there's the portrait stuff too, of individuals sometimes you do, more than personal, yeah. So, but the lovely thing about it is there is no law to it, and there is no formula to it. So when you sit down with it, the stuff comes from everywhere, and sometimes it's words first, or sometimes there's a thing that happens together where you feel a phrase musically. Another time it's just something that comes to you musically, And you're always the one, and the writer's always really the one in the background, and I think I like it that way. And the writing side of the whole thing is the most interesting and challenging side.